Hello viewers, welcome back to our series of lectures on the topic amino acids, peptides, proteins and nucleic acids. In this series, we have so far covered the chemistry of amino acids in detail, and then thereafter in the previous session, we started by talking about peptides. We covered the general aspects of peptides, what are peptides, how are they prepared, and then how do we represent them, and variety of things on that. And today we will continue our discussion on peptides, and we will take up a very important aspect of peptide chemistry, that is peptide synthesis. Now, in today's session what we are going to do here is that we will talk about different aspects of peptide synthesis by starting by raising an issue, that what are the issues related to peptide synthesis. Is it very straightforward? Because we know that peptides are found by combination of amino acids, but how does it happen? What are the issues involved? And then how do we come across those issues? Then what kind of strategies we use for the purpose? All these things will be covered in today's session there. Okay, let's make a beginning by recalling that peptides are found by condensation of two molecules of same or different amino acids. That's what we did in the previous session. Now, basically what we have is we have got two amino acids, say alanine here and a valine here. The two can combine together. The carboxyl group of the first amino acid, alanine in this case, and NH2 of the second amino acid, valine in this case, the two combine together and then they give out a molecule of water. Two functionalities combine together to give you a new amide kind of a linkage, which is called as a peptide bond. So, that is what we learned in the previous session. Now, the question comes up is, how do we prepare them? That is fine. As regards the chemistry goes, the two can combine and give me a peptide. But how do we prepare them? Can we just do that you take two amino acids, say amino acid 1 and 2, put them two together and then see we get a peptide? Is that simple or something else is there? Let us look at it. The answer to this question, that is just reacting two amino acids work or not, the answer to that is no. The reason being, why is it no? Because let me take an example here. Suppose I want to synthesize a dipeptide by the name alanyl glycine. That means two amino acids, that is alanine and glycine, are combining to give me a dipeptide there. Now, what do? Suppose I take alanine and glycine and put them together into a reaction vessel, what do I get? One possibility could be, that is you have alanine, that is what I expect actually, that is alanine and glycine, the two combine, that is my expectation, and they combine together to give me alanyl glycine. That's my target peptide over there. That's one possibility, definitely yes. But besides this, there could be another possibility like this. It may so happen that because the issue is coming here because of the fact that both the amino acids I am dealing with, they have got bifunctional. There are two functions in each one of them. So, because of this bifunctionality, you can have variety of products coming over there. It may so happen that is the glycine, the carboxyl group reacts with the amino group of alanine and gives me a very different peptide altogether, which will be glycyl alanine. That means I want to make alanyl glycine, but I am getting is glycyl alanine. That is not desirable here. Maybe another possibility is there. Other possibility could be, because when you take a reaction mixture has got alanine molecules, they got glycine molecules over there. When the two are there, a alanine can combine with glycine, that is what I want, or a glycine can combine with alanine, that I do not want. It may so happen that two molecules of alanine combine in themselves. That means that there are so many thousands and there are trillions and trillions of molecules in the solution, they may combine like this. When the two combine like this, my target, the kind of resultant product I will be getting will be alanyl alanine, a peptide which I do not want. I am getting a dipeptide which is not desirable. Yet another possibility could be the two molecules of glycine, they react with themselves. That means the carboxyl group of one combines with the amino group of the other one and give me a dipeptide glycyl glycine. So, maybe there are more possibilities. It may so happen that this molecule of glycyl glycine, suppose the two molecules of glycine have reacted together to give me a dipeptide. It may happen that another molecule of alanine comes and combines with this dipeptide here, maybe somewhere here. So, what do I get? I get glycyl alanine, or maybe that alanine comes and joins from this side. I may get alanyl glycyl glycine. So, there are quite a number of possibilities. I may get, because I targeted only one dipeptide, as against that there are a possibility of getting 4 different dipeptides there. And also there is an additional component possible there, that there could be tripeptides or even larger peptides. Tetrapeptide could be there, though in smaller numbers or smaller amounts, but they will be there. So, if I just take 2 amino acids and make them together, I will get the product I want to get, but in addition to that I will be getting I will be getting a mixture of peptides there. And the issue comes is that I need to separate all this large number of peptides which I get. That is a very tedious job to do, because when you are, and these peptides are very closely related, because they are not very different from each other. So, the separation also is a big issue over there. That is one bit. Secondly, suppose I get about 6 peptides there. I separate them all, I get 6 peptides, then I have to identify which is which. That is again is a cumbersome exercise to take up. The thirdly, once you have identified, suppose I got 6 peptides, I separate them all, identify each one of them, thereafter I pick up the material which I want, and then rest of it goes as a waste. There is a lot of loss of material and effort in the process. Now, with these issues in mind, the question comes up is, how do we selectively join the COH group of alanine with the NH2 group of glycine to get the peptide which I want to get? The answer to that is, we devise a strategy here. The strategy is as follows. That is, what we do, that because the whole problem is coming because the 2 molecules I am trying to combine together, both are bifunctional. So, and there are certain functionalities which I do not want to react. So, what do I do is, the strategy could be as follows, that is, I block or protect the functional groups that we do not want to react, so that we prevent them from reacting together and then form the peptides. That means, I am trying to block all possibilities of getting undesirable peptides. So, what I want is, I want only that the COH group of alanine and NH2 group of glycine only react, no other possibility is there. So, that is the strategy I can think of. How does it happen is as follows. What I can do is, I can take a molecule of alanine, and since there are 2 functionalities, I somehow block one of them. I protect or block the NH2 part of it. Similarly, I block the COH part of the glycyl residue or glycine residue there. Then when the 2 are in this particular fashion, that means the 2 are blocked the way I wanted it to be, then when I combine them together, then what happens is, then there is only one choice possible, that is, the COH group of alanine will combine with the NH2 of glycine and give me the desired peptide, that is my alanyl glycine, but the peptide I will be getting will be protected here, because in case of this N terminal of this will be blocked here to certain blocking group there, and same will be true of the C terminal here. Next step is very obvious, that is, what we do is, we do some kind of a deprotection, because I have introduced some kind of a blocking group there, some kind of a protection which I can deprotect. I deprotect, and deprotecting, what I mean is, I remove these 2 groups chemically and I get the peptide which I want. So, that is a strategy which we use in synthesizing peptides. How do we do that? And before we come to that, maybe one we can think of, because we are not dealing with peptides which are just dipeptides. Maybe we need to make a larger peptide. Invariably, we need to make larger peptides, maybe of any dimension for that matter. So, how do we extend the chain? The logic or the strategy for extending the chain will be as follows. That is, there could be 2 possibilities there. First one, that is, I selectively deprotect the amino part of the peptide I got, which was protected peptide, and react with unprotected amino acid. That means, I had alanine, glycine, the 2 reacted together, and these 2 terms are blocked here. What I can do is, I can remove this part, say the C terminal, the C blockage of glycine I remove, and then make it react with another molecule of alanine here, or any amino acid I want to use, with C blocked here and N free there. So, this N free and then this C free will combine together. So, that is one strategy here. So, that is as regards our making a dipeptide, but typically or rather invariably needing larger peptides to be prepared. So, how do I go about it? What is the strategy I have to use to make a larger peptide, or rather, in other words, how do I extend the chain? To extend the chain, there are 2 ways of doing it. One way is that I selectively deprotect the amino group of the protected peptide and make it react with another amino acid whose N terminal is protected there. So, whereby So, the C terminal of this amino acid I am going to use and the N terminal of my peptide here, the two will combine to give me a tripeptide. And then this sequence I can continue. So, I can go from dipeptide to tri to tetra to penta and so on and so forth. I can extend the chain. Other possibility could be I selectively deprotect the carboxylic group of the protected peptide and react with a C protected amino acid. So, in that case the amino acid I am going to add will have its N terminal free. So, it will join on the C side of the peptide chain there. So, this process can be continued to get the desired chain which I want to create of the peptide. Okay. Now, then question is, this is so good so far about the strategy part of it, but how do I do this? How do I do that? So, there are few things which you have to learn. How do I protect the amino group? Because okay, in terms of strategy, yes, but how do I do that? How do I protect the carboxylic acid group? How do I react the two? Because we just said the two amino acids with suitable protection are put there, they will combine. They will not combine. We had to have some means of coupling them together. So, the reaction has to be brought in. And then another aspect is, how do I deprotect the protection I will try to introduce in the system there. So, protection and deprotection both have to be worked out. Let us learn about each one of them in brief details over there. Now, as regards protection of amino group, there are a number of unprotecting groups are known. There are two of them are very important. One is called as tertiary butyloxy carbonyl group, commonly called as BOC group, and second is 9-fluoronyl methoxy carbonyl, that is FMOC group. So, the two are very commonly used unprotecting groups over there. Let us see how do we introduce them. To introduce the BOC group, what we do is we take the amino acid and react with ditertiary butyl dicarbonate. When I do that reaction, the reaction is as follows. That is my reagent here, that is ditertiary butyl dicarbonate, react with the amino acid which is free, and then I use this in presence of, this is my triethylamine, that is triethylamine, it is a base there. In the presence of base, when I do it, the reaction occurs, and as a consequence of that, what I get is, I get a BOC derivative of the amino acid. Basically, in this case, this NH2 is now blocked. That means, this is the blocking group which has come over there, and this C terminal of the amino acid is free. So, this is the way I can introduce one N terminal protection there. Now, once I introduce this, I need to know how do I remove it back. So, the BOC groups can be selectively removed without affecting other functional groups by reacting with acids. Once I make the peptide, when I have to deprotect later on, what do I do is, I just add a little amount of trifluoroacetic acid or maybe HCl or HBr, this protection goes off there. That means, this amino acid which was obtained as a protected amino acid, after the reaction is over, I can just kind of, to remove this to cleavage at this stage, what do I do is, I add some acid over there, and then I get my amino acid back, or the peptide I can get back there. So, introduction and removal. So, both are very convenient to do here. The second group which you can introduce is FMOC group. Similarly, here again what we do is, we take the reagent here, make it react with the amino acid in the suitable conditions, which again are alkaline in nature. So, previous case I used a base of a different kind, here again I am using sodium carbonate as a base here, and in this process what do I get is, I get my FMOC amino acid. Essentially, the thing which I have to underline here is, that is, I am trying to block this N terminal of this. That means, by blocking, what happens is, I am making it unreactive towards the peptide synthesis there, so that I ensure that the reaction only occurs at the C terminal part of it, or the carboxylic group of this. Now, as regards the deprotection, again FMOC also is a group which can be selectively removed by reacting with bases like ammonia or some kind of an amine there. That is how it happens. So, you got an FMOC amino acid, I can just add ammonia or a small amount of base here, I can get this removed, I can retrieve my amino acid or the peptide back over there. So, because this is very important, the importance of the whole strategy is that the groups should be easily introduced and should be possible to selectively remove them. If I can't selectively remove them, then this group is of no use to me, because as I said earlier, a lot of groups have been proposed, but these two groups are FMOC and BOC are the ones which are most commonly used, because they can be very selectively removed, because that is what I want. It shouldn't happen that when I make a peptide, when I try to remove this group, peptide also breaks down. That should not happen, then I am losing the whole effort. Okay, let's learn how do we block the C-terminal part of it, or the carboxylic group. To do this kind of blocking of carboxylic group, if you remember, we just learnt about some of the properties or the reactions of amino acids. We learned there that we can prepare the esters over there. So, same thing we are going to make use of here. That is, you take an amino acid, you can make maybe a methyl ester. So, what you do is you react with a suitable alcohol. So, I want to make a methyl ester. I take methyl alcohol, and under acidic condition I can generate this methyl ester of the amino acid there. So, I am blocking the C terminal here, or alternatively I can use benzyl alcohol and get the benzyl derivative there, or benzyl ester over there. So, they are very commonly used, conveniently introduced blocking groups over there. Then again we need to have some means of deprotection as well. How do I deprotect that? The deprotection of esters typically is very straightforward. We just do with some amount of a base there. So, if I have methyl ester, I just do alkaline hydrolysis, I get my peptide back, my peptide or the amino acid back, this group is broken there. And same is true of even benzyl group, but benzyl group has an additional advantage here, because we can even kind of remove it by doing hydrogenation there. That means, this group can be removed by hydrogenation as well. So, there are two ways of removing a benzyl group into the benzyl ester here. Now, the third thing which we need to know is how do I couple the two. That means, I have got an protected amino acid and a C protected amino acid. How do I make the reaction occur? How do I make the peptide come into being? For that to be done, there again number of methods are available there, but the one which uses DCC, that is a reagent here, which is basically dicyclohexyl carbonamide. DCC is used in presence of inert solvents like methylene chloride or THF. That is a very convenient proposition, and what happens is as follows. That is, you have a unprotected amino acid here, say in this case this happens to be the alanine I wanted to use, and this is my C protected glycine residue here. So, when I have the two together, I combine the two, by themselves they will not react because they are not as reactive. I introduce a reagent called as DCC, which I just mentioned here. In the presence of DCC, the two will combine, they will eliminate a water molecule, and I will get a protected peptide there, which can be suitably cleaved to continue the chain, or just to deblock them to get the dipeptide I wanted there. So, that is the strategy I use for preparing peptides in solution phase. Now, there is a word of caution to all this. The word of caution is that the strategy what we have outlined right now is for simple amino acids without any functional groups in the side chain. But suppose I am using an amino acid, say aspartic acid, I want to make a peptide, say alanyl aspartic acid. What do I do? So, in that case, I will have to do protection of the C terminal carboxyl group as well as the side chain. Now, suppose I want to introduce lysine, here again I have to do protection at the N terminal, the amino group of the alpha amino group, and also the side chain amino group there. So, we have to take care of that as well, and as a consequence, when you have to protect the side chains, the issue becomes little more complicated there, because there are a lot of possibilities which come into being, and it becomes a little difficult way to manage this. Thirdly, there could be some amino acids which have very peculiar behavior, because side chains are such, it becomes very tedious to introduce them into the peptide. So, all these are the issues which typically come across anybody who is trying to venture into synthesizing peptides in the solution phase. So, what are the drawbacks here? Let us put them together. The first drawback is it is very time consuming and skill intensive, because all these steps I have talked about, kind of introducing a protecting group or deprotection over there, or isolation of peptide, all these things are very skill intensive. Not everybody can take this as a routine job. Then we need to purify the product at each stage. Suppose I made a dipeptide, I want to continue the chain, I have to remove it, kind of purify it, then only I can move to the next stage. If I just go with the mixture there, then I will be leading into a situation where we will get a lot of products which are undesirable there. So, yield will be very poor there. Yet another issue is that it is accomplished by the loss of material at every stage. Every time I want to kind of purify material, I am losing some materials at every stage there. Since there are number of stages involved, at every stage I am losing material. So, as a net result of this, that my yields are very poor, and this is not economically viable for large peptides. Another issue is that, as I just mentioned, the yields are very poor, and then for larger peptides it becomes totally very economically unviable there. So, what is the way forward? The way forward to this is what is called as solid phase peptide synthesis, short form SPPS. This was proposed by Bruce Merrifield, that is why it is also called as Merrifield synthesis, and Merrifield got a Nobel Prize for just this in 1984. The strategy is as follows. What basically it does is, as the name suggests, solid phase. So, I am not doing synthesis in the solution here. So, I have a polymer support. I take a polymer there which is a solid here. On the polymer I anchor my amino acid, and then there is a deprotection here. I bring in my next amino acid, make it combine on that. Then I deprotect again, bring in the next one. So, I do all peptide synthesis onto the polymeric support. I do not need to kind of isolate the peptide at every stage. So, a lot of things are taken care of. All the issues what we had in the solution phase synthesis, they are taken care of by SPPS. Let us move a little further and see that in this process, I just mentioned different steps I want to do, because I have to isolate that. Suppose I want to remove some kind of byproduct, I just wash it with some solvent, it will go off. So, my polymer which is intact, a solid bead over there, on the bead my first amino acid, maybe another few are there, a chain is hanging on that. So, all other things can be just washed out, and I get my peptide linked onto the polymer there. So, that is what we do here. And if we really look at it, so SPPS got three distinct sets of operation here. The first one happens to be, that is, we have to assemble the chain onto the peptide chain on the polymeric resin there. And second is, having done that, we have to cleave this chain from that polymer and then deprotect that. And then lastly, what we have to do is, we have to purify and characterize what we have got. Have we got the right peptide or not? So, that is a basic outline of how does it happen in case of SPPS. But the most important component is the first one for us to discuss over here, that is, how do I assemble my peptide onto the resin there. Let us look at the strategy here. It goes as follows. What you do is, you take a polymer here, it is a large polymer there. On the polymer, the polymer is a very special kind of a polymer, such that it has certain anchoring group over there, such that if I take my first amino acid, which is say unprotected here, X is indicating a protection over there, protective group there. So, when that comes and this combine together. So, with this process, this first step is called as anchoring. I am anchoring my first amino acid onto the polymer support there. The PS is polymer support. So, I get this as the starting point here. Then what do? I deprotect and kind of neutralize that. I deprotect means I just, we know because the same groups we can use that X could be BOC or FMOC, both are possible there. So, I deprotect that, and then thereafter what do? I just kind of neutralize that, so that my amino group is available for the further reaction there. I bring in my second peptide here, second amino acid here. Okay. The second amino acid which is coming here is having another protection on the N terminal, and this Y here basically is an activating group there. It is not protection of any kind, it is because COH group by itself is not very reactive. So, what we do is, we make some kind of an maybe it could be an acid chloride or some maybe anhydride or something of that kind, which makes it more reactive there. So, that I am just facilitating this kind of a coupling here. When they couple together, what do I get? I get my polymer support back as right there, then my first amino acid is there, and then this peptide group has come into being. This NHCO is my peptide bond. So, this is the protection here. I can continue the same way. I have this here, I can deprotect here, and bring in my next amino acid, and this process can continue, and eventually what I can get is, I have all this when the peptide is generated there onto the polymer support. I can cleave it here, there are suitable reagents available for that. I cleave the peptide from the polymer support, separate it out, then deprotect, and my peptide is handy. Thereafter, I can just do purification and characterize my peptide there. So, that is the beauty of this whole process there. It is so versatile a technique that nowadays this whole process of Merrifield synthesis has been automated. Nowadays, we just go into the market, scientific instrument companies, you are getting machines called as peptide synthesizer. You have a machine there, you load all amino acids in that as per the kind of protocol of that, and then we can prepare peptides of right kind just automatically by using this peptide synthesizer there. So, that is the importance or the beauty of this technique called as SPPS. Nowadays, very few people venture into making peptides in the solution phase, because there are a lot of issues involved in that. So, typically invariably we can say nowadays peptides are made by peptide synthesizer, which are using a SPPS method over there. Okay. Let us sum up what we have done today. What we have done today is that we just started by asking ourselves that how do I, because we know that theoretically the two amino acids can combine to give me a peptide, but what are the issues involved in that? Because the first issue we came across was there are multiple products possible over there. So, then we devised a strategy whereby we can combine only the desirable groups to come together to react, so that I get a peptide of right kind. And then thereafter in that process we talked about variety of things, how do I block my N terminal or C terminal, how do I deblock and all those things. So, having done that, so we could put forth a strategy whereby we can synthesize peptides in the solution phase, and then thereafter we raised certain issues, certain concerns of making peptides in solution phase, and then we came forward with another strategy, what is called as SPPS, that is Merrifield synthesis, that solid phase peptide synthesis. How does it take care of all the issues of solution phase synthesis, and then we have seen what is the strategy used in case of SPPS there. So, that is all what we wanted to talk about peptides. In our next session we will talk about proteins now. So, we will talk about proteins, what are proteins, how do I classify them, what is the structural organization of proteins. That is our main theme for the next session there. Thank you.